What if everything you know about Chinese food is a story someone made up? And the story got so good, so delicious, and so deeply embedded in your life that nobody ever bothered to check if it was true? What if the dishes you've been ordering your entire life, the ones you reach for on a Friday night when you don't want to cook, the ones that feel ancient and exotic and authentically foreign, were actually invented around the corner from where you live? The truth about Chinese food will genuinely surprise you, and once you know it, your takeout menu will never look the same again. Hi, my name is David, and this is Food Origins, the show where we pull back the curtain on the meals you think you know. Hit subscribe, because today we are going deep. Food number 1, fortune cookies. Let's start with the most audacious myth on the entire list. Fortune cookies are so synonymous with Chinese dining that most Americans assume they arrived with the first wave of Chinese immigrants. Ancient wisdom, crispy golden fold, the little paper message that somehow always knows exactly what you need to hear. Except none of that is true. Fortune cookies were invented in early 20th century California, most likely by a Japanese landscape designer named Makoto Hagiwara, who served them at the Japanese Tea Garden in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park around 1914. The cookie itself is modeled after a centuries-old Japanese temple cracker folded around a small paper fortune. China had never heard of them until American tourists began asking. Today, roughly 3 billion fortune cookies are produced every year, almost entirely in the United States. The largest factory is in Brooklyn, New York, a symbol of Chinese culture, invented by people who were never Chinese at all. Food number 2, chop suey. Chop suey was once the most famous Chinese dish in America. Steaming, mysterious, piled high in bowls, and eaten by millions of people who were absolutely convinced they were tasting something ancient. They weren't. Chop suey was born in New York City in the late 1800s, cobbled together by Chinese immigrant laborers feeding hungry American workers with whatever scraps were left in the kitchen. The name comes from the Cantonese tsap, suey, meaning miscellaneous leftovers. That is the entire romantic origin story right there. Leftovers. What the world dressed up as exotic Eastern cuisine was, at its core, a survival dish. A poor man's scramble wearing a borrowed identity. By 1900, chop suey parlors had exploded across American cities. And here's the detail that stops people cold. When Chinese visitors were actually served chop suey in America, they didn't recognize it at all. Reinvention, it turns out, can taste like home, even when home never made it. Food number 3, General Tso's chicken. Walk into almost any Chinese American restaurant today, and General Tso's chicken is sitting right there at the center of the menu. Crimson, sticky, addictively balanced between sweet and heat and crunch. It was not born in China. It was created in New York City in the early 1970s by a Hunanese chef named Peng Chang Kuei, who fled mainland China after the Communist Revolution and eventually landed in Manhattan. Peng named the dish after a celebrated 19th century Qing dynasty general from Hunan province as a gesture of regional pride. But the flavor profile was a pure American adaptation. The original version was far less sweet, far more austere. When it moved to New York, sugar stepped in to meet American appetites. When General Tso's chicken was later introduced to China, food critics found it genuinely baffling. Too sweet. Too heavy. Nothing like Hunanese cooking at all. One man's nostalgia became the best-selling Chinese dish in American history. Food number 4, EGG rolls. The egg roll is the universal opening act of the Chinese-American dining experience. That first crispy golden cylinder arriving at the table before anything else. The smell of hot oil and cabbage hitting you before it even lands. It feels ancient. It feels essential. It feels like it was definitely invented somewhere in a dynasty. It was invented in New York City in the 1930s. The egg roll, as Americans know it, thick, doughy, deep-fried, stuffed with pork and cabbage, was developed in Chinese immigrant communities on the Lower East Side. Its closest Chinese ancestor is the spring roll, a far more delicate creature, thin rice paper, lightly fried or eaten fresh, with centuries of genuine history behind it. But somewhere between Guangdong province and a New York kitchen, the recipe got completely rebuilt. The wrapper thickened, the filling changed, the frying got deeper and more committed to the cause. Some food historians credit a New York restaurateur named Lum Fong with popularizing the modern egg roll around 1935, though the exact origin remains, as they say, deliciously disputed. What isn't disputed is this. The egg roll became the single most ordered appetizer in American Chinese cuisine, a dish that China itself never cooked. Transformation, not tradition, built this one entirely from scratch. Food number 5, chow mein. Chow mein has the comfortable familiarity of a dish that feels like it has always existed. Those softer, crispy noodles, tangled with vegetables and protein, are served in millions of takeout containers every single night across America, Britain, and Australia. And unlike most foods on this list, chow mein does have genuine Chinese roots. The name comes from the Mandarin chow mian, which means stir-fried noodles. Noodle cooking has existed in China for over 4,000 years. Sit with that number for a second. 4,000 years. But the version the world eats today is a completely different story. American chow mein, thick and built around bean sprouts and celery and coated in a cornstarch thickened sauce, bears almost no resemblance to anything served in China. Cantonese immigrants reshaped it in 19th century California, adapting their cooking to local ingredients they could actually find, substituting and improvising until something entirely new emerged. And then it went to Montana, of all places. Butte, Montana developed its own distinct regional version of chow mein that is still celebrated there today. A 4,000-year-old Chinese tradition quietly reinvented in the American West by people simply trying to eat something that felt like home. Montana. I genuinely cannot get over that. Food number 6, Kung Pao chicken. Kung Pao chicken carries the kind of name that sounds like it was pulled straight from the deepest heart of ancient Chinese culinary tradition. That fiery, peanut-studded sauce. That perfectly balanced heat. And here is where this story gets genuinely interesting, because unlike most foods on this list, Kung Pao chicken is actually Chinese in origin. It was named after Ding Baozhen, a 19th century Qing dynasty governor of Sichuan province whose honorary title was Gong Bao, meaning palace guardian. The dish was reportedly his personal obsession. Tender chicken, dried chilies, and roasted peanuts tumbled together in a wok over screaming heat. But during China's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, the dish was banned. It was declared a symbol of feudal elitism because of its imperial associations. It went underground, survived in secret, and re-emerged after the revolution ended. That alone is one of the most dramatic origin stories in food history. A chicken dish that truly survived a political purge. Then it traveled to America, where the sauce got sweeter, the heat got milder, and a new version was born. The American iteration became so different that China and the United States essentially cook two separate dishes that share one legendary name: survival, reinvention, and one governor's personal appetite, all folded into a single wok. Food number 7, fried rice. Fried rice feels like the oldest, most honest item on any Chinese menu. Humble, satisfying, the kind of dish that seems like it has fed civilizations for millennia. And in its basic form, it genuinely has. Fried rice has existed in China since at least the Suey dynasty, around 600 AD. It was born from the practical need to use day-old rice that had dried out overnight and was too stiff to eat any other way. But the versions most of the world actually recognizes are American fried rice, Thai fried rice, and Hawaiian fried rice loaded with pineapple and Spam. Those are entirely separate inventions wearing borrowed clothes. In Thailand, fish sauce and basil replace soy. In Hawaii, Spam entered the wok after World War II military supply chains flooded the islands with canned meat. In American Chinese restaurants, the dish became sweeter and heavier, built around a flavor profile that Sui dynasty cooks would not recognize in 1,000 years. The dish belongs to China, but the world made it their own anyway, and honestly, the world did some very good work with it. Food number 8, sweet and sour pork. Sweet and sour pork is the dish that introduced an entire generation of Westerners to Chinese food. That lacquered crimson plate, those shatteringly crisp pieces of pork, drowned in a sauce so glossy it catches the light from across the room. It is a genuinely beautiful looking dish. China does have a real tradition of balancing sweet and sour flavors. Tangu cooking stretches back centuries in Jiangsu and Hunan provinces, where vinegar and sugar were combined to create complex layered sauces for braised meats. But the neon orange, pineapple-studded, cornstarch-thickened version that conquered every Western Chinese restaurant in the 20th century was engineered specifically for foreign palates, most likely in Cantonese immigrant communities in 19th century Britain and America. Food historians believe early Chinese restaurant owners deliberately amplified the sweetness and simplified the flavor profile because Western diners found the authentic version too sharp, too sour, too unfamiliar. They were not dumbing it down, they were translating it. Then they added pineapple, which appears in virtually no traditional Chinese cooking, purely because Western customers associated it with exotic indulgence. The result outsold almost everything actually eaten in China. Sometimes the translation outsells the original. Food number 9, dim sum. Dim sum feels like the most authentically, irreducibly Chinese dining experience in the world. The bamboo steamers stacked to the ceiling, the rattling trolleys, the translucent folds of hargao glistening under fluorescent light. The ritual of pouring tea before anything else touches the table. If you've had a proper dim sum sundae, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you probably also know that the check at the end is always somehow shocking. And dim sum is genuinely Chinese. Born along the ancient Silk Road in the tea houses of Guangdong province, where weary travelers would stop to rest and take yum cha, which means drinking tea, with small plates of food served alongside. But the elaborate, theatrical, trolley-wheeled institution that Chinese communities around the world recognize today? That specific ceremony was largely shaped not in China, but in Hong Kong in the mid-20th century. It was Hong Kong's urban tea house culture that transformed dim sum from a modest roadside tradition into a full theatrical dining event, codifying the rotating carts, the stamp cards, and the sheer overwhelming variety of over 1,000 documented dim sum dishes. When that culture immigrated to San Francisco's Chinatown, to London's Gerrard Street, to Sydney's Haymarket, it carried Hong Kong's version with it, not the Silk Road original. What the world calls authentically Chinese is actually authentically Hong Kong, and that distinction, small as it sounds, carries the weight of an entire identity. Food number 10, chili peppers in Chinese cooking. Sichuan food without chili peppers is almost impossible to imagine. That volcanic, lip-numbing, sweat-inducing heat is so fundamental to the cuisine that it feels like it must have been baked into the DNA of Chinese cooking since the very beginning of civilization itself. But chili peppers are native to the Americas, every single one of them. They were cultivated by indigenous peoples in Mexico and Central America for at least 6,000 years before a single chili pepper ever touched Chinese soil. They arrived in China only after Christopher Columbus brought them back to Europe from the Caribbean in 1493. And they didn't reach the Sichuan Basin until sometime in the late 16th or early 17th century, barely 400 years ago. Before chilies arrived, Sichuan cooks achieved their signature heat using Sichuan peppercorns, ginger, and mustard. Then the chili landed, and it detonated across the region like a culinary revolution, absorbing into Sichuan cooking so completely and so rapidly that within a century, it seemed like it had always been there. Today, China is the world's largest producer and consumer of chili peppers, a crop it didn't know existed 400 years ago. The most Chinese flavor in the world came from the other side of the planet, and nobody noticed the trade. Food number 11, Mongolian beef. We saved this one for last because it might be the most brazen identity theft on this entire list, And yes, I said identity theft. Mongolian beef, thin-sliced, tender, coated in a rich, savory sauce with green onions, served over a heap of white rice. A staple of Chinese-American menus everywhere. It has nothing to do with Mongolia. Mongolian beef was invented in Taiwan in the 1950s, popularized in a style of restaurant called Mongolian barbecue, which also, for the record, is not Mongolian and is not really barbecue. The dish was created as part of a theatrical cooking style where food was cooked on large circular iron griddles, and the Mongolian label was attached largely for exotic marketing appeal. It sounded adventurous. It sounded foreign. It sold. Here is the detail that completes the picture. Traditional Mongolian cuisine is built around dairy, lamb, and horse meat. It is defined by the demands of nomadic life on the steppe. It contains nothing remotely resembling the sweet soy sauce glazed beef dish sitting on your plate right now. When Mongolians encounter Mongolian beef for the first time, the reaction is approximately the same as a French person discovering that something called French dressing was invented in New Jersey. Polite bewilderment followed by the quiet acceptance that names mean almost nothing in food history. 11 foods, 11 stories. 11 moments where the world looked at something on a plate and told itself a comfortable, delicious lie about where it came from. And here's what I want you to take away from all of this. None of these origin stories make the food worse. Fortune cookies are still wonderful. General Tso's chicken is still one of the greatest culinary achievements in the history of Friday nights. The story behind a dish does not diminish it. It deepens. Because what food history really is, when you strip away the myths, is a record of migration, survival, improvisation, and the remarkable human ability to take something from somewhere else and make it entirely your own. Every dish you think you know has a secret. Now you know 11 of them. If this changed the way you see your takeout menu, hit that like button and subscribe to Food Origins. Tell me in the comments which of these surprised you the most, because I genuinely want to know. My guess is Mongolian beef. It's always Mongolian beef.